All right, so get this. Today's deep dive takes us right into Silicon Valley. We're going to be talking about a trend that has everyone talking.
Oh, yeah.
Y Combinator. You know, arguably like the world's most prestigious startup accelerator seems to be backing companies that are like surprisingly similar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We were intrigued when we came across this analysis by DeckMatch, a startup product data company. And trust me, this isn't just about Silicon Valley drama. This gets at the core of how investors are thinking about the future of innovation.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, it all blew up with the Pure AI controversy. Remember all that? Pure AI, a code editor, gets into YC, and almost immediately, people are saying it's a clone of another YC-backed code editor.
The internet was on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Some people were slamming YC, saying they were fostering unhealthy competition.
Right.
I think Gary Tan, YC CEO, jumps in, defending Pure AI, talking about how competition actually gives users more choice.
It was fascinating to see that debate play out. Ultimately, Pure AI ended up rebuilding their product from scratch. But what I find really interesting is YC's official statement on all of this.
What did they say?
They basically said, look, we're focused on founders, not specific ideas.
Wait, hold on. So they're saying they're more interested in the people behind the startup than whether the idea is like completely original. Isn't that kind of counterintuitive? Especially for a place like YC that's supposed to be at the forefront of innovation.
Right. You'd think they'd be all about the next big thing, the totally unique concept. But their logic, and it's reflected in their request for startups process.
Request for startups.
Is that even in crowded markets, the right team can completely change the game.
Okay. So for those of us who haven't gone through the YC ringer, what exactly is this request for startups process?
Essentially, it's YC's application process, and it's notoriously tough. They get thousands of applications from startups all over the world, and they only accept a tiny percentage. And what they're really looking for in that process is the team, their vision, their resilience, their ability to execute. The idea itself is important, of course, but it's not the only thing that matters.
Interesting. So it's less about, have you invented the next Facebook?
Yeah.
And more about, do you have the grit to make any idea work?
Exactly. YC's philosophy seems to be bet on the jockey, not the horse.
Interesting.
But of course, not everyone buys into this approach. Brian Onell, who founded the security startup OneLead, is a YC alum himself, and he was pretty vocal about his concerns.
I see.
He argued that fostering this kind of direct competition within the YC network was actually harmful to the startups involved.
So on the one hand, you have the tight-knit YC network, a huge advantage for any startup.
Yeah.
And on the other, it potentially becomes this pressure cooker where everyone's stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah.
It's a tricky situation for sure.
It really is. And then you have someone like Nick Evans, the founder of Tile, which was acquired, and now he runs Avocado, a restaurant point-of-sale system. Both companies went through YC.
Okay.
And he actually embraces competition, even within the YC network. He has this great quote, "Startups don't die by murder, they die by suicide."
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
He's basically saying you're focused on your competition, you're already losing. But how does he justify that stance?
Well, he argues that having multiple companies in the same space, all supported by investors who really understand that industry actually leads to better outcomes for everyone. The investors can share insights, connect startups with the right resources, and really help them navigate the challenges of that specific market.
So it's almost like having a bunch of really smart, experienced coaches in your corner, all pushing you to be your best. I can see how that would be valuable, even if it means going head-to-head with your classmates.
And that's exactly where DeckMatch, the company behind the analysis that sparked this whole deep dive, comes in. They were intrigued by the Pure AI situation, and as a data company, they actually just raised a big funding round themselves.
Congratulations.
Thank you. They decided to dig into YC's portfolio. They wanted to see just how often YC backs companies in similar spaces.
So their mission is to provide data-driven insights. But this specific analysis was sparked by this very public controversy. I love how a good drama can sometimes lead to some really interesting research.
Correct.
Okay, so DeckMatch goes on this data deep dive into the world of YC companies. What do they find? What categories are we talking about here?
They identified several categories where YC has a surprisingly large number of companies competing in the same or very similar markets. And remember, these are all companies that went through YC's rigorous selection process. So it's not like they're just letting anyone in.
Lay it on me. What are some of these categories?
Well, we've already talked about AI code editors with Continue and Pure AI.
Right.
But there are others, Void Easy Code Ellipsis, all YC companies, all going after the same basic market. Then you have the world of food, beverage, and restaurant point-of-sale systems. Between 2020 and 2023, YC funded companies like Avocado Drupos and Polo, which is focused on the Latin American market.
So even within that one category, you have companies targeting slightly different niches, but still competing in the same broad industry. That's really interesting. And I'm guessing AI is a big one.
Right. Oh, absolutely. AI is everywhere, and YC is definitely on board with that trend. I've got companies like Apton Persona AI and Topo, all focused on AI-powered sales and CRM. Then there's the world of AI meeting assistants with companies like Circle Back Onward, Sonnet, and Spinach AI.
Wow.
And let's not forget about the AI legal assistants with companies like Dioptra, Leia, and Tower. It seems like every aspect of our work lives is getting the AI treatment.
It's mind-boggling how many AI applications are popping up. But what's really interesting to me is that YC isn't just blindly following trends. They're also aware of when a market is becoming too crowded or when a particular technology is losing its luster.
Right. They're not just backing any AI company that walks through the door. They're being strategic about it. For example, crypto trading platforms were all the rage a few years ago, especially after the success of Coinbase, another YC alum. But given the recent downturn in the crypto market, we've seen far fewer YC entrants in that space lately.
Makes total sense. They're adapting to the market, not trying to force a trend that's fizzling out. So what other areas have fallen out of favor with YC?
Well, e-commerce store platforms were another popular category for a while, but that market has matured quite a bit with giants like Shopify dominating the landscape. We've seen fewer YC companies focusing on that recently, perhaps because they see less room for disruption there.
So they're recognizing that certain markets are already pretty saturated, and it might be more difficult for a new startup to gain traction there.
Right.
What else is on the not hot anymore list?
Corporate expense cards. There was a wave of those a few years ago, especially after the rise of Brex, another YC success story. But that area has also seen fewer YC entrants recently, possibly because the market is becoming more competitive and the barriers to entry are higher.
It's fascinating to see how closely YC's investment decisions align with broader market trends. They're clearly not just looking for innovative ideas. They're looking for ideas that are ripe for success in the current market.
Absolutely. They're not just about disruption for disruption's sake. They're about identifying opportunities where startups have a real chance to make an impact.
So we've seen how YC seems comfortable backing multiple companies in similar spaces, even if it goes against our initial intuition about what a top accelerator should be doing. And they're clearly paying close attention to market trends when making those decisions. But what does it all mean? What are the implications of this approach? This is where it gets really interesting, right?
Well, on the one hand, you could argue that this approach, fostering competition within a carefully curated network like YC, actually leads to faster innovation. It creates this pressure cooker environment where startups are constantly pushing each other to be better, to iterate faster, to come up with new features and solutions.
So it's like a high-stakes game of leapfrog where everyone's trying to outdo each other.
Yeah.
And that can benefit not only the startups themselves, but the entire industry, right?
Exactly. You get more diverse solutions, faster development cycles, and ultimately a more dynamic market. Plus, having multiple companies tackling the same problem can lead to a deeper understanding of the challenges and opportunities in that space.
So it's not just about who wins the race. It's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible. But isn't there a risk that this approach could stifle truly unique ideas?
That's a really good point, and it's a valid concern. If investors are all flocking to similar concepts, it could discourage founders from pursuing more unconventional paths. Why take a risk on something completely new when you could get funding for something that's already proven to be hot?
Right. And if everyone is focused on incremental improvements within existing categories, we might miss out on the next big breakthrough, the truly disruptive innovation that comes out of left field.
It's a balancing act for sure. How do you encourage healthy competition and rapid iteration without stifling creativity and originality?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something that we as observers of the tech landscape need to be thinking about.
Absolutely, because the decisions that investors and accelerators like YC make today will have a ripple effect throughout the entire tech ecosystem for years to come.
So what does this mean for someone who's out there right now working on their startup idea, dreaming of getting into YC or securing funding from a top-tier investor? Well, what's the takeaway for them?
I think the takeaway is that while having a unique idea is still valuable, it's not the only thing that matters. YC's approach shows that investors are increasingly focused on the team, their execution abilities, and their understanding of the market.
So even if you're working in a crowded space, if you have a strong team, a clear vision, and the ability to execute, you can still attract attention and succeed.
Exactly. And remember, competition can be a good thing. It can push you to be better, to innovate faster, and to ultimately create a more valuable product.
It's all about playing the game strategically, knowing the rules, and being prepared to adapt and evolve. But before we get too caught up in the strategic side of things, I think it's important to acknowledge the human element here.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, startups are built by people. And those people are driven by a complex mix of motivations, ambitions, and fears.
Right. And competition, whether we like it or not, is deeply ingrained in our human nature. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others, striving to be the best to win, to stand out from the crowd.
And I think YC, perhaps unconsciously, is tapping into that primal instinct. By creating an environment where startups are constantly challenged and compared to each other, they're essentially harnessing that competitive drive to accelerate innovation.
That's a fascinating insight. It's like they've created this high-stakes, high-pressure game, and the players are responding in kind. But where does that leave us as a society? As we embrace this idea of competition as a catalyst for progress, are we inadvertently creating a world where only the most ruthless and ambitious survive?
That's a really important question, and it's one that we need to grapple with as we continue to navigate this rapidly evolving technological landscape.
It's a reminder that progress is not always linear, and that every step forward comes with new challenges and responsibilities.
Well said. And as we continue to explore the frontiers of technology, we must do so with both a sense of wonder and a healthy dose of caution.
This has been a truly thought-provoking deep dive into the world of Y Combinator and its unique approach to fostering innovation. But before we wrap up this first part of our conversation, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Go for it.
We've seen how YC embraces competition as a catalyst for progress. But in a world where artificial intelligence is rapidly advancing, could this approach actually accelerate the development of AI in ways that we might not fully anticipate?
That's a fascinating question and one that we'll need to grapple with as AI continues to evolve.
If AI systems are constantly competing and learning from each other, could they potentially reach a level of sophistication and autonomy that surpasses our expectations or even our control?
It's a possibility that we need to consider seriously. As we embrace competition as a driver of innovation, we need to be mindful of the potential consequences, especially in the realm of artificial intelligence.
It's a reminder that progress is not always linear and that every step forward comes with new challenges and responsibilities. But we'll delve deeper into that question in our next segment. Stay tuned.